Good morning, everybody. David R. Becker here with Becker Art, and I'm back from Canuga, actually from Montreat, North Carolina, where the Canuga Water Media Workshops happen. And I'm back, and we are in the studio again. It's always nice to be in the studio, though I would have been. I like to be outside, but it was raining today, and I'm very still cold here up north in Illinois, northern Illinois, and that's where I come from, northern Illinois, in between Milwaukee and Chicago, if you want to know. Today we're doing this moped scene, and or I'm going to do this no moped scene, and as you can see, I have a new palette here. Look at this, and let me just show you close up. These are all granulating colors. Holbein just brought out their Holbein 24, which I did a video on and stuff. But I'm gonna try. I just put these out, and these are all 24 in this palette. And let me just show you really quickly. I'm gonna try these out, and I've tried them out this whole last week when I was in Canuga doing some paintings. If you saw my paintings on Facebook or Instagram, you saw I used mostly a lot of these, but not completely these. But yeah, there's 24 colors here, and I really think these are going to be really big, because for me they're going to be big to teach you artist students that it's going to teach you how to float your pigment finally. And because if you don't float your pigment while you're doing this with these pigments, they don't work. Now, what does that mean? No, they work, but to show what they do, like to separate the little pigments that are in there, there's usually like two colors in these pigments, two or three colors, and they kind of are different weights of, or different lengths and things of the pigment, and they separate when they put them into water, like a puddle of water. And that's my whole thing, is when I'm teaching you, is I'm always teaching you how to float your pigment. Basically, the best way of putting the pigment onto the paper is when you're floating it in water, wet into wet, right? Wet into wet. We do a lot of wet into wet. Wet on dry is also, on dry paper, gives you a hard edge. But inside that hard edge, I want you to learn how to float the pigment. Because inside, like this, this moped, when we do some blues or this thing, it could be a small blue line, but you can still have a hard edge. But inside there is wet into wet, right? So that's where you float your pigment then, and that's where these things look amazing. And let me tell you, they really look cool. I mean, look at this. Look at this. Look at this really closely. They separate these little pigments, and this is like two different colors. Over here we've got like orange and an opera. It's a pretty amazing, and they granulate slightly. Some of the pigments granulate more than the other one does, and it's really cool. So these are all the colors that they have, and you can buy them in the 24 set, or you can buy them in different six color boxes. And I just had them over there, and they're named like wind, which is landscape, water, and stuff like that. So there's different boxes of 6, and then you can look at them. And I think they're just coming out April 1st when you get them in your stores. But it is pretty amazing, very amazing. So let's just go in here. So looking at my value study, and say hello if you'd like in the chat, and ask questions, please. And so let me just really quickly go over what I'm going to be doing with this. I always make a black and white, right? And I turn it into a no tan. And as you can see, the ground, the moped, and this little wall here, and the awning, and the top here, those are all my lights. And everything, like inside, underneath the awning, in the storefront, that's kind of the darks, right? So very simple. And I get the wheels and stuff all coming together. So look at these darks are all coming together like one wash. And that's what I love when I make this, break it down to light and dark. I can then, even though this is a middle tone and some of this other stuff is middle tone, but if I know that this is all dark, I can do this all wash all together, And I know these little things in here are middle tone and they're maybe into the light area, but as long as I keep the big areas together, and then what you can do when you have the big areas together, you can do that wash first, right? And we do the Becker Art 3-step always. Step 1 being that you do the light and the colors. Establish your light and color. And so that'll be this awning and this top part here, the moped, this blue behind there, this street and the front, and those are going to have pigment that is going to be the lightest light, and the darkest lights cannot be as dark as the lightest dark. Does that make sense? So if this is light, you got to shift it, and it could be close, and you can even have some of the darks in there, but just majorly that has to be the color or the value in those areas. That's why I do this black and white, so that I can see this. Here you can see too with the color that it's blue, and so that the blue will stick out, but it still needs to be light blue, not dark blue, because this awning is in the light area. So maybe the side can be a little bit darker as it goes on the side, but try to keep this darkest light lighter than the lightest dark. Okay, should I say that again? Hey, Maria. And so Maria here, welcome, and Sherry. Maria's got some classes going on for gouache, and so if you ever want to know about gouache, look up Maria, brushstrokes down there. She just, and Maria put some kind of website or something down in the chat so they can find your classes. She's doing some classes out in Lake Zurich, and so just please put down your information on how to get to your classes. Hey, Rebecca. Hey, Ann. And there goes away the chat because there's a it went way down. Stop with the advertising here. Where's your chat? There it is. You're way down there. Okay, so let's get going here, and let's start with our lights. Right? We start with our lights, and I'm gonna use all the granulation colors for my lights, and I'm gonna do some spattering because my lights, a lot of it is gonna be like white, a little bit of white, and so I'm gonna basically spatter water too. I'm just gonna put water on here, just kind of blop it down because I don't need any hard edges right at the moment, and so, but I kind of want to have some hard edges for some of this texture up here between the light. So just kind of I'm gonna texture it or spatter it with a little bit of water because I don't care about any of my darks right now. Right? Step one, all your lights, and so just go over here and get kind of cover my lights with a little bit of water. And then up here, it's gonna be orange blue is basically what. If you look at notice the picture, I think we'll go with orange and blue being our complements and our color scheme basically, right? So look at this orange. Oh my God, look at this orange. And I'm just gonna spatter some of this into the water. And again, this is all pigmented or granulating. This is granulating, not pigmented. This is granulating pigments. And look at it right away there. Yellow separates from the red. It's so cool. You know, and that color is the brightest color. That's that one with the opera. Look at those colors that I'm mixing in there. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a pink, a yellow, and orange. And this sign is rusty, and so I'm just going to kind of go in there and spatter a little bit. And it really shows that you have to, if you want to get these granulating colors to work, you need to do wet in the wet. It has to float in pigment. If you took it really thick and just put it down, it's not going to happen because it's like a thick amount of pigment. Like if you're using it like gouache, opaque watercolor, if you're just putting it down real thick, you're not going to get that runniness of the pigment separating. There's like 2 or 3 colors in that wash. And so I'm just today experimenting with this. So that's what these Sunday morning things are for me, basically, because I'm just testing stuff out. I'm practicing, and so it's fun. And I just turned on the camera for you guys just to see. If you want to do this picture and try it, you can do it. Snapshot, screenshot the picture. I don't put this in my website or something where you can download the picture. That's the paint along on Thursdays. People were asking me that, and it's like so just go in and screenshot if you want to do this demonstration. So look at that nice runniness to it. I'm just going to make it kind of runny. And right now I'm going to see if I can't just use these granulating colors and not use any of my regular watercolors. Well, these are regular watercolors too, but they're just granulating. And actually some of the other watercolors I use, the Holbein watercolors, they also granulate, but there's just one color in there usually. Or, well, it's like some of them have one color and 2 colors, but they don't have the pigmented that's a little bit thicker, thinner, finer, and rougher. And so that's the way they separate. If you have questions, please let me know. There's Maria. She's put down, so called the Main Street Art Center in Lake Zurich gouache classes. All right, so let me see what else we're going to put here. This awning has a little bit of, let's take a little bit of this light blue. And look at my new palette, my new Holbein palette. I'm using that because I can switch the colors around, which is one nice thing. There's one problem I don't like about this palette, but it's just nothing I can do about it. But you can take these things out. You can take them out and move them around. But I don't like that this closes on top. Like, see, if I have this fresh paint, if I close it, it's upside down, right? So it'll all run into this part, and that's not good. So I'm going to have to keep this open, this palette, until these dry, until the Holbein colors dry a little bit. They get tacky, and they don't run then, but they still instantly rejuvenate. And that's another thing about these granulating colors. They rejuvenate. So pretty cool. Now look at this bright color. Let it. Again, these are my lights. Just putting the lights in. Not worrying about detail. I'm just looking for a colorful light. I'm not putting in the stripes. I'm not doing anything except putting in the light colors and get a little bit of texture. You know, if you can get some texture, that's cool. I'm not worrying about my darks that I'll go over the lights with. And again, put a little bit of this color. Look at this. And the sign. There's a sign right here. I'll make that like kind of the top part. And since I'm using a lot of water, it's going to be really light, right? You're going to see, though, the colors separate in there. And I'll put a little bit, I don't know. I'm not used to what colors do what and which colors are there, because in this chart here, you know, when I was working this last time, I had a chart like this with my swatches, and you should do that. If you get some new colors, make a swatch thing so you can see the colors from a light to a dark, and wet it and let it float and see what floating pigment looks like, and also the hard edge. And then you get the colors that you want, and then you look and you go, okay, well, I think I want to use a little bit of that color or this color for a lot of the things, especially if you're using brand new colors and you don't know what they're like. You know, test them first and work with them a little bit. That's what I'm doing today, is working with them just to see what they look, what they feel like, what they look like. And this is way too many colors to have in your palette, usually. I mean, it's like you're not going to use that many colors, but I'm going to try them all, though. So I just want to see. Just want to see what happens. Keep it light and... They look really cool in the chart, and I really like the look of them. So when I was painting this last week in Canuga, I did like 4 paintings, and I did interiors, exteriors, and it was kind of neat. It was fun, and I really enjoyed using these pigments. And I'm going to be teaching with them because I want students to try them, because you will learn how to do watercolor the correct way of doing wet in the wet, because they will not work if you don't do wet in the wet. Like if you just take a really thick pigment and just stick it on there, it doesn't have a place to float and separate. That's the neat thing about them, they separate. The pigments separate. And see, in the water, you can just put it in there and push it around. Let's see, this is kind of like a... And they surely do have some really neat colors. And I must say, this set is unbelievable. I needed to do some brickwork and stuff, and I just wanted to like let it float on top, and man, it looks so cool. And you can mix these together too, and but you have to watch it. So you know, there's gonna be so many colors, and it could be really gray, but maybe they want gray, right? And it's so weird for me to use just one color out of the palette sometimes, because you know me, when I have my other palette here, I mix a lot together. Well, it was so strange to just take one color and put it down, because in that one color that you're dipping into, you get maybe 1 or 2 or 3 colors. You get 2 or 3, or maybe, I'm not sure if there's 4 colors in some of it, but it seems like one of these colors I saw, it just kept on bringing out colors. Very lightly and kind of pigmented, but very cool. I know this looks dark, but it's still not dark. It's just a light color. this one color, ocean blue or something like that. It's called something like ocean something. It is the most amazing color. I must say, I'm going to use a lot of it later for the darks. For now, I'm just using some of this. And I can't tell you what colors these are right now because I'm not used to it enough yet to know what these colors are. I'm going to label them later on, and then I'm going to use these a little bit more. And I think I'm going to put my other colors in a palette like this too. And the thing is, I can switch these around. I can just use certain colors from this 24 set, and then take other colors. Like I can get these little things. There's where are they now? Oh, there's these things. So in this palette, you get these extra little things that you put into the palette. Some are larger, some are smaller. I think the small ones are fine. You know, you look at the size of my brush, can go into all of them, and I can just dip into them. So that's kind of cool. And the fact that you can move them around to two different palettes, or just one palette and save those to the side. Once they dry, though, make sure they get tacky. So here, let's do the front here and the bottom. Also, they have these dark grays that are really, really neat. These blacks or grays that are very cool. But I'll wet them down and let them float, and you watch, you'll see that they have all of a sudden the blue comes out of there. The whatever color, like this is a little bit of purple. It looks like it's coming out. It just separates and it kind of comes out of the wash. And I never thought about it, but when I'm putting these, let's say I put these colors together, then I've got like 8 colors or something. Because each one has like either, well, 4 colors. Then if I'm taking one here and this one has like 2 colors, this one may have 2 colors. So you're getting 4 colors that'll be coming out of the wash. Float your pigment if you use these. So see how you can see there's it becomes like purple, blue, and it just kind of separates. And it also looks pigmented, which means that you see some of the pigments in them. Some people think that granulating colors, these Holbein granulating colors, are like pigmented colors where you just see like ultramarine blue. And a lot of our companies, the pigment separates and kind of lays in the cracks of the paper. And so that's called pigmented. And granulating, I thought that's what that was. And it is, you know, it is that it's granulating, but it's not as thick a granules on these as you'd think. Like I know that Daniel Smith makes a pigmented paint that is really granular, and then this is granulating. So I'm not, you know, I think it's kind of, I don't know if it's the right word to use for this because it's just neat. You know, it's really cool how it separates. And when I go into my darks with a lot of water, you'll see really then how this stuff works. Spatter some more. I've never even tried this, spattering this pigmented stuff into the pink on top of blue. Oh, this is going to look cool. Look at that. That's already, it's just floating around in there. I know a lot of people call this pouring. Like when you have it really wet, it's pouring. It's all just wet or dry for me, okay? If you're ever in my classes, everything wet into wet or wet on dry. That's all you have to know. Are you doing to get a hard edge on dry paper, or are you using it wet to get a soft edged? And this is like light. I'm going to put a darker part in there, but I just want to keep some parts white. And I'm looking at my value study, or my notan up here. You know, the notan up here says that moped is mostly light. There's a lot of lights in here. Even the light blue, so this is all light. That area is light, so you can see I'm putting colors in there, so that'll be it. That'll be the lights. Then I'll go around with things that are going to be really, really dark. Hey Eva, I missed you saying what the palette with the watercolors was. The palette is a Holbein palette, and the colors I'm using today are these 24 Holbein granulating colors, set of 24. This is a Holbein palette. And let me show you the palette. This is a Holbein palette that you can remove the colors in. This has a lot of Japanese writing on it, but it basically comes with 2 of these things. two different sizes, 4 of those, 26 of those, and you can move them around in the palette. So they're both Holbein. You know me, I'm all about Holbein. All right, so let's put some more of this in there. Just putting down my lights. And this is very it's very transparent, so it's not opaque. It's not opaque colors. And I have used these opaquely. What does that mean? That means that you can't see through, right? That's opaque, meaning you can't see through. So when over here, when I did these charts, look at on this side, it's opaque. And opaque watercolor is gouache. It's not manufactured as gouache, but it's used like gouache. You know, so gouache basically is opaque watercolor. And you have to start realizing that there's transparent and opaque. And it just happens that they call the opaque part, where you can't see through to the paper, that's then gouache. But they make gouache separate with different materials in them, so that they used to put whitening agents in there to make it so you can't see through, and everything was pastel. But now Holbein doesn't do that. They grind their pigment finer, and there's a different medium inside the gouache or the tube, and then so that it does dry a little bit more quickly than the watercolor. Not quickly, it dries harder, where their watercolor, transparent watercolor, doesn't dry hardly to a rock, you know. And even the gouache, that's how come you use a different kind of container for the gouache, so that you can keep it airtight, so it doesn't dry as hard. So far, look at this. This is pretty cool to me. I think it's really neat. It's a whole different look for what. Well, it kind of looks like I took a bunch of pigment and put them together, and it's floating, which I normally do anyways. But this is kind of interesting that you can have the colors do that on their own. Like it's mixing their own color. So it's for, I guess it's for lazy watercolors like myself who don't want to mix their colors. So you just put it in there and just let it go. I'm stalling here a little bit, guys. I'm trying to let this dry. While it's drying, I'll spatter a little bit more. It gives me texture. Spattering into a wet wash gives you texture, and with this, it even gives you different colors. Especially in the street down here, let's get a lot of texture on these bricks on this pavement. I decided to put, well, it is pavers down there, so you know, I'm just giving it texture by spattering. All right, I wonder if I should be drying it. Do I have my? Let me see. I should use my quiet dryer, but I only got one of them, and I took it with. And it's in my traveling box, so. I do have this one though. I have this. Just make sure I don't pull the plug out. So this is a Wagner strip gun, but it dries things very quickly. It'll also show me what happens if I do dry it fast, and I do it with a hair dryer or a stripper, and if I dry really fast, if it affects the pigment and how it separates and stuff. Usually you don't want to do that. Use a hair dryer or a stripper, because what happens is it forces it to stop doing its thing where it's separating and stuff, because then you're stopping it from separating, right? All right, let's get into our darks. I've been talking a lot here too. It's like we have hardly anything done. All right, so I'm just gonna start from the biggest area of darks now, right? Because of my middle tones, like middle tones to my darks, and then to my details. Becker 3-step, remember? I need a drink. Cheers, everybody. Cheers. Coffee. That coffee in the morning is just so nice. So let's just go right into my large darks that would be in here. But there's some stuff in there, so I'm gonna go from top to bottom. You know, sometimes it doesn't matter if you're doing your darks and do, because this is going to be one big thing and that's still wet here. So I'm just going to do some darks up here and go around the part and then get down to there because all this darkest should be together. It's one big dark. And if you want to do a step 3 with a little bit of detail in that right away, that's fine too. So let's see, when I take a lot of this pigment and put it on thick, very thick, and put it on very thick, and then add water to it. Because I want a hard edge, right? I want a hard edge. So I'm going to put it on there thick and then add water. Add water so it floats. I'm using different colors of these. Man, this is going to be interesting. There's like six colors in here right now. And I might make it kind of gray, but I think that's going to be kind of cool. Look at how vibrant these colors are. See, that's almost too vibrant or too pigmented. One thing about Holbein, boy, they grind their pigments down fine, and they're so what's the word I'm looking for? I'll think of it in a second. It's yeah, it's very, very pigmented. Lots of pigment. Also, there's some greens in here that I think are actually really neat. I never really liked greens, but some of these greens I tried last week were really good for trees and outdoor stuff. They look more natural because they weren't bright green. And that is kind of detail-y that I'm doing a hard edge, but it's okay because it's a big one. It's a big area, and I kind of want it to float, and underneath the sign here too. So I want it dry so I can make the hard edges, but I still want the inside that, I don't care how small it is. If there's water, put pigment in there. Let it drip in there. Let it just go in there and do its thing. Now last week I worked with both paints together. This one today I'm just doing with the pigmented paint. I just wanted to see what it'll look like if I just use the the granulating paint. I keep on saying pigmented. It's not pigmented. Though it does look pigmented in some spots, it's granulating watercolors. And I'm just using all different those colors. There's 2 purples in this set that are just, look at this. I mean, these purples are so cool. Because it's not just one color. It's not just a purple. It's purple and, look again. It's purple and blue, and there's even this one has a little bit of like a earth tone to it. There's some earth tone in there. This one has blue and a violet to it, and a more reddish violet. It's really, look at this one. This one has blue, violet, and brown, and it's called Eurasian J Rose Gray. So I gotta get used to the names. Well, yeah, it's not going to be it's not going to look granular if it's really dark because it'll be dark, right? And so the granules are in the dark, and so yeah, you won't be able to see the granules so much, but you can see the separation of the pigments, though. That's the neat thing. Is like here you can see already, it's the yellows. There's some yellows coming through there. There's some blue. There's purple or like a sienna. So yeah, you'll see the darks only the fact that you won't see the pigment, but you'll see that it's dark, colorful. It's a colorful dark then. That's all you see. And the thicker the pigment is, the less you'll see the pigment like floating. It's like using it like gouache. If you use it like gouache, like on this chart here, if you look at this, on this side, you don't really see anything because that's so opaque that you don't see any granules, and you don't see the paper because it's so thick. So that's opaque. And over here, it's transparent because I used more water, but there's where you see all the pigment then. So yes, you're absolutely right, Sherry. Yeah, let's see, go around this nice and dark. But remember, most of us watercolors never make things dark enough. And so this will really make you be aware of the pigment versus water ratios. And that's why I have the hardest time teaching. So I got a feeling these are going to be, I'm going to do a bunch of little quick videos about this paint and how if you use this paint and make it work the way it's supposed to, then man, you're going to be able to do watercolor exactly like how watercolor is supposed to be done. You know, because you do have to do wet into wet and float your pigment. You should always float your pigment, unless you're doing a hard edge and then or making it really dark like this. But then enough water, so you get hard edges with dry paper. That's all you have to need to know. And everything inside that hard edge should be wet and floaty. And it doesn't matter how big it is because it will work. It will work. And if you have to do 2 layers to negative paint something, like these pipes right here, they're going to be negative painted. So I put a middle tone down, right? And then I'll go back in with a really dark, dark, and maybe opaque dark. And that'll show those pipes that are there. So that's the big problem with beginners learning how to use a pigment and work the pigment as either opaque or wet, transparent. Because you can use watercolor just like gouache, and you can use gouache just like watercolor. I mean, like transparent watercolor, because they're both watercolor. And unless you're using gouache, acrylic gouache, then it's a little bit different because then it's acrylic in it, right? I feel they should have never called it gouache because people think it's a whole different kind of paint. It's watercolor, has a lot of the same things in it, but you can use gouache just like watercolor and use it into a wet wash and you'll get it to soften itself. That's why I like doing wet into wet because I don't have to worry about making a soft edge. I just let the paint or let the water do my edges for me soft. Now I just wet this here with not the right amount of pigment, but I'm wetting it and then I'm just going to go in here. And I'm just trying different ones. I don't know what I'm dipping into because I'm not used to this palette yet. I just did it this morning, so I have no idea what these colors are. So I just dip into them because for dark and lights. So I don't know these color names. I don't know what they are because this is the first time I tried it. And so, but I'm going to go in here and then I can see the ones that are brown and I can see ones that are purple and blue. I can pretty much see that, but the exact thing that they're going to look like when it's done, I don't have a clue. Don't have a clue. As long as you know the big parts. And that's another thing about beginners. They always are so worried about the different colors and making sure they get the right color. It's like, get the right value. That's more important. Get the right value. And use your favorite colors. You know me and my purples. You can see how much purple I've been using here already. And then when you have a wet wash, which is, wet washes are always wet when when you're using water, right? And so, what was I just gonna say? I just lost my train of thought. I better take a swig. Cheers, guys. Do you see using these colors in some more than others? Water will work really nice. Yeah, you use your colors that you like, and I think this is just more colors together when you dip into one color. Like, you notice me just taking one color and putting it in there and not dipping. Like when you saw my other palette, I would go around right everywhere and I'd pick up different colors. That's like how my palette was so messy. This will just be that I'm going to pick up one color that has 2 colors in it. So it will be a little bit different in that aspect that, you're picking up the colors. Now, where's this? Where's this chat again? Oh, here we are. Hey, Mary Beth. And so, yeah, so it's basically it's just another, instead of picking up 2 colors, you pick up 1 color. And then you get that color. But you notice me now, I'm even doing that with these colors. So I'm getting even more colors in my paint. So, with that, anytime you do anything different and new and you're trying some things, do like I do. Practice with it. This is just practice for me. And I put my camera on to show you guys, but I've never worked with this stuff. This week I did, but I used both paints. This one I'm just using this paint. But they're all watercolor, so they all work together in that aspect. It will all work together nicely. I'm working my way down from a dark. This is my dark area now, so I'm actually on a large middle tones and darks. There is a little bit of light right here, right? That's going to be a little light, and that looks really bright down here. So let's put a really bright color in here. Now look at how thick that was right there, and it's dry. So it won't separate until I put water in there. And let the water float. Then it'll do its thing. Here, there's this box across. I'm just going to take that out of there. I'm not going to worry about that little box there. And I'm just dipping into dark colors. I don't know what the colors are, so I'm just dipping into dark colors to get a dark color in underneath there, and hoping that it works. And then once I have the dark color in there and it's still wet, I can put this. I know that orange will work really good in the eve of things, so I'm going to take this orange that I can see it's really bright orange. I'm just going to let that float on top of these other colors. So we're going to see what happens. We're going to see. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what's going to happen with these things. So this is an experiment. And when you're a student in classes and stuff, experiment. It's not time to do beautiful paintings. It's time to experiment and learn things. I always say when I do my workshops, you're not here to do a beautiful painting. You're here to learn techniques and stuff so that you can do those paintings when you're not in my class or when you're not watching me online here. So you just do these practices. It could be just a flat sheet of paper where there is nothing else except white paper, and you're not going to do any scene or anything. You're just testing out the watercolor. And that's what we do when you first come to my class anyways. We don't do, well, we do a photo, but we don't use a photo. We just make stuff up. Look at all these really beautiful darks back here. Let's see, I'll put this in, make a little bit of lines in here. A little bit of, these look like some really cool colors. Some really neat colors, I mean. Not as in cool as in cold. Now the bottom here is like a middle tone first. Always do your middle tones first. And this is going to get really light because there's a lot of water in there. Not much pigment and not much dark pigment. So I got to get a little bit more dark pigment in here. And float it thick. Float it thick because it will still separate, but you got to float it thick enough so that there's enough pigment in there. That's why everything gets so light all the time for everybody, and 20 and 30% lighter when it dries, because you're not using a lot of pigment. It looks dark when it's wet, but not when it dries. And if you can do it with one wash, like I'm trying to do this all with one wash, so that I never have to go back in, and then I'm done, right? As a matter of fact, I have half an hour almost. But yeah, so just work it thick enough so that it dries at the value you want it and that you don't have to come in again. And this is a nice dark shadow underneath it. And if you use it thick, it also doesn't spread out as much, right? It stays put. Now this part over here is really dark too, but it's right here. But it'll be a soft edge if I do it in this wet and the wet. If I want a hard edge, I gotta wait for it to dry, right? Which, you can also make it really thick, the paint, and then it'll look hard with just a little bit of soft edges. So the amount of soft edges that you get also determines how much paint you have on your brush and how dry it is, the paper. It's really strange dipping into a dark and you have no idea what it is. But it's all practice. It's all practice. You all got to do that. You just got to practice things. This is actually a little bit more light. Actually, it's darker than in my value study or my no tan. It is a little bit darker. This right here. You can also put down the thick paint and then add water to it. That's another way of, like when you put the water in afterwards, then it's going to, pulls it up and it makes it start floating, the paint. And this whole area here is darker, middle tone and dark, so you should also know what's cool and warm on your palette, and I like I said, I don't even know that. I can dip in like this and look, that's kind of grayish, cool. So let's go to the grayish cool down here. And this is a bright blue on the fender, but still dark, so I'm just going to put that as one big wash. Meaning that it'll turn gray or like a middle tone, and then later I'll go in with a really dark, a sharp dark and detailed dark to get it to look very realistic, like what it is. Like the black tire will be later, but the rim can be a nice middle tone. Because you gotta look at the overall values, and there's the little things that are in there, those can be done later. Still following my value study. You always follow your value study, meaning, or the notan, and meaning that what's dark and what's light. The moped, the street is light, the awning, and the sign. Remember in the beginning I told you that? And so that's, I keep that going. I don't switch from that. The side of this sign will be darker. It's weird using just these colors though. It's different from, I'm not used to that. It's so different when you don't use a new palette that you don't know what the colors are. You tend to dip into ones that I just look for dark and light, so I'm seeing how it works. And there's a couple that I haven't dipped into yet. I kind of want to use all of them. Let's go down here and get some. Yeah, I didn't know that was all just purple. So let's put a little bit of brown on top of that. Go around the bike. Morning, everybody. Any questions? Please put them up there. I will come back to them. Once in a while, look up. Let's put some blue. I know this gray is over here. I wonder what those are like. And I'm not even sure if I'm painting differently than I normally do. I'm sure. I think I'm painting like I normally do, and do my big 3-step process. It'll be interesting to see how I use these in my outside when I'm plein air painting. How I'm gonna feel about them then. I can't have this many colors. I mean, I'm gonna have to figure out before I go out which colors are my go-to colors. I may have them all with me, and then I have to. That's how come I've always wanted a palette like this where I can move them around. I just didn't like the fact that you turn it upside down and it goes out. So I'm just gonna have to get all these palettes ready. And they have a bigger one of this. This is a smaller one. They have a bigger one of this that holds 30 colors. This holds 24 small ones. But if I put some of these big things in this palette, then there's a couple of big ones that is like double, which I don't think now that I use this, that these are big enough. They're big enough for my brushes and stuff, and I think I'll be using the small ones. I thought at first I would use more of the big ones because I would want a lot of paint in my palette, but these are fine. Here. Here's dark. Yeah, don't be afraid of testing your watercolors to make them really thick like gouache, or really watered down and floaty. Do them both. You have to see how they both look. So this goes around blue. Color here. Back of this fender is blue. Put a nice rich blue in there and just let it float. I'm gonna get my round brush out now so I can do littler, smaller areas. Like the tires, I can go start doing the tires. There's the muffler. And I said in the thing I will also use gouache on top of this, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this thick when it's dry, just put it on thick, and I want to see how it works as a opaque color. So while this is still wet, I'm putting other colors in there and letting them flow because it's gotten too light. This is a dark area, so I'm picking up more pigment and letting it float in there while it's still wet. And also making structures in there with thicker pigments. I can do like the door handle in the door, make that a little bit. Oh, why is there shit? Huh. That never happened before. Oh, this is the light over here. Oh, my board is kind of bowing that way. Okay, 15 minutes. I better hurry up here a little bit. Let's get let's get going here. Yeah, negative painting is a fun thing to see happen. Like the motorcycle just appears, right? Because you're just doing the lights, and then when you put the darks in, you're doing the shapes of the negative. And then it just comes together, and you start seeing it. And then you do the details of it, that makes it even come more and more together. But always start with the big areas first. So everything, even when you're drawing it, you start with big shapes first. Otherwise, it's too hard to draw something this complicated with a bunch of that stuff in there. You always simplify your complicated shapes. And I'm just putting a middle tone in here for the shadowing. And then I have this really dark black here. You can put really thick right there, and then just bleed it out, right? See, when I'm using it really thick, it becomes opaque. It becomes gouache. You know, keep on saying, you know, opaque watercolor is gouache. Transparent, and it's not that you buy a tube of watercolor, it's the way you use it. Yes, you can buy gouache, you can buy watercolor gouache, or you can buy transparent watercolor in tubes, but you can make your transparent watercolor opaque and gouache by using a lot of it in thick. Now you can't use transparent watercolor really thick to a certain depth because then it'll fall off your paper. So, but with gouache, it has something inside it that lets you make it a little bit thicker. Not really thick, because that will also, depending how thick it is, it will also break off, or just peel off, or break, or fall off. Yeah, basically. There's some pipes in here. The handlebars are dark, and this whole area right here is really dark. But I'm gonna make this one a little bit more colorful, like the handlebar, make it a little bit warmer. But now that I made this background a little bit darker, I decided that I'll maybe make the handlebars a little bit lighter. There's all these pipes going on back there. And how important is it to make all those things look exactly like the photo? Not really. Not much of anything. You just do what you want. I mean, right now you can see the big picture. I've got the lights and darks, right? It's all in there. And now I'm just getting the details. All the big areas of medium and dark are there. Now it's all details. It's all going in and making things look like what they are. Like this little basket, this wire basket in front of this thing. I'm going to have to wait for a lot of this stuff to dry, though, to get really hard edges. I may have to use out the hairdryer again. Or the torch. Like this stuff here is really dark, and so I'm going to go in there. A bigger brush, a little bit more pigment, and see, like you were right. I think it was Sherry that said that if it's too dark, you won't see the granulation, and because it's the same value as the granules, and it's dark, so you won't see the granulation happening. And it's not as wet because you're using it thicker. this area is really still really wet. So look at how much pigment I used to make that line. It's gonna be soft, but it will be soft but dark because it's really thick, medium, which I'm trying to test to see how thick I can make it. It handles, I'm thinking that it handles exactly like watercolor, transparent watercolor. It handles in wet and the wet. It handles just like the non-pigment or the non-granulating paints. My big way of painting nowadays has been using transparent watercolor until the end, and I've been using slight amounts of gouache afterwards. And I don't have my gouache palette with me. I just use my watercolor sticker. And I also white. When you add white to your pigment, it makes it really opaque. So sometimes I use white with like light colors, not with the dark colors. But I'll use black. I'll use peach black sometimes for the other parts. I'm noticing that you do see separation in the pigment right here. Even though it's not black, it's not dark, you see it in that those darks right there. All right. See, I'm getting smaller and smaller with my details. Now this, I'm not going to print out a sign. It's probably a good thing because you won't want the same granulating on the entire painting. Yeah, you're right. I know there's a couple artists that do nothing but granulating the whole painting, and it's not. You want something where it's flat. It's good to have some parts that are flat, and so that you can get the hard edges. And it doesn't need granulating everywhere, anyways. Really, it's basically you do what you have to do to make your subject matter fit your style, right? I mean, everybody has their own little style, or they're building to their own style, and some people will have it all granulated, some people have it. So it's what you like. In the end, do what you like, or what you like in your look of your painting. I'm actually liking both. Like I like it to look like a watercolor, transparent watercolor, and also kind of like an oil or an acrylic with thick paint. I like the both. And that's what makes everybody unique. You have to do what you have to do to make your painting yours. And how do you get that style? Paint a lot. It's not something you do. It's kind of like subconsciously, because you're just painting a lot and you're doing things that you like. And if you're doing things that you like, you'll find that that's what you like, and so you're gonna do more of it, and then it becomes your style. Don't go if you like another artist's style and you want to make it like that, because every teacher that I took, I started painting like them, right? And that's fine, but then you kind of break off to that and use another person's. You take another teacher, or you learn something that you really like, and you add that to your style. It just automatically happens. That's something I don't have. I never thought about trying to do a certain style exactly like somebody, or you just do what you do and do what you like. Put down colors that you like, and subject matter that you like. Learn how to do the medium in a certain way. There's many ways to put pigment down, right? Wet into wet, wet on dry, airbrush, pouring. I mean, my God, there's so many different ways of making a wash. And different timing, and some people do hyperrealism, some people do, it's all up to you. You do you. You do you. Look at that. That's my quote for today. You do you. I guess these stripes in here, and then we can get even more and more details. How much time do I have here? Oh, 6 minutes. 6 minutes. We can do this. So let me just put some lettering in here, some fake lettering, because I don't want this to be red. Same thing with the sign up there. There is nothing, no words in the picture, but I feel it needs some darks up there, inside there, and some more dark spatter too. Let me just spatter that real quick. Get some spattering in there. Well, this is all still soaking wet. I can't get any hard edges in there, which is fine. Granulating texture. Yeah, we have a lot of texture in this one, and then I'm putting in more right now with spatter. See, if you spatter from the side, you get lines that way. If you spatter down, you get dots downwards. And then you can also spray that too, or you can take a damp brush across it to kind of get mush them into the light, because it's a water droplet and it's going to get lighter anyways. But you can also do tapping, like I like to tap the paper with your brush to get a texture. There's so many ways of getting texture. It's unbelievable how many ways there are. And that's all, again, up to you. What do you? You do you. That's my new, from now on, that's my new statement. You do you. And there is no right or wrong way exactly of doing certain things. You know, there is an exact way of doing like wet into wet and making a hard edge and stuff, but, you know, there's so many ways of doing things with watercolor. I remember last week I was showing you, or a couple weeks ago, I was showing you how to totally take everything out of your paper and start again. Like if you make a mistake, or if you can just go back over. So there's many different ways of doing things. So maybe that's the way you want to look. You're always going over and taking things back out. All right, let's make some lettering here. You notice how I don't want you to be able to read it completely. Try to make sure that you don't make anything that somebody can read. Or make a profound word or something there. Just look at it and just give it a kind of abstract lettering. Unless this person's place and you're doing it for them and they want it, then you can go in there and do parts of the lettering correctly, you know, and making so that you can actually read it to what it is. Here, a little color for. More spatter. Now let's get our nice. My favorite parts are always on awning, the stripes on the awning, and that's fun. I'm just using this light blue. Like I could use my horizon blue or my pastel colors. You can use this all together. Remember, you can use it all together if you find that you don't get all the colors that you want for this. And also, I'm wondering, I should add white to this and see how that works. How the white pigment separates from these things. I didn't think about that. I have to do that in a second. First, let me just do my stripes here. I'm just taking this blue, and I don't know what it's called. And the bottom part here, I'm going to come in with a different color blue, because this part down here is going to be darker, right? I may have to go over it again this way when it's dry to get that look of the shadows underneath it. It kind of looks like it worked okay though. They also are coming out with, well, they already have the pastel colors. They are going to be coming out with iridescent colors, I guess. And they have the luminous. Remember the luminous colors I showed you guys? The luminous colors, the ones that are like neon. So there's that set. So you know how many colors you have. It's just too many colors, really. And so that's kind of like this palette right now. So if I'm actually doing something where I think I need a certain color, I can just flop it out for that, especially if I'm plein air painting. Just flop it out when I go, and then just put it back in later on. And now it's super detail time. And then again, it's not dry enough to get to do this. How many more minutes? Oh, it's already done. We're done. No, I'm going to do a few more things. I know it's a little bit over, but when I go for my details, I can put them in with white paint, and that's considered gouache then. Or I do have my gouache set, which I don't have with me right at the moment. I could use that to make things, hard-edged and thick, very thick, where you cannot see through it. It's almost like putting a piece of, like a water, acrylic thick amount of pigment over something to really cover up, and it's going to look like opaque. You're not going to be able to see through it. It's not going to have this granulating on it. It's just going to be very thick, but it looks kind of neat when you use that on together with the transparency. All right, then just a little thing right here. I think we're good to go. I'll work a little bit more on it when the cameras are off, just to finish it up, some of the little details. And really the details, there's nothing to learn there. You look at the picture and you copy what you see. This is the most important part here, though, is getting the big parts done. The rest, the little details, is you copy what you see in the scene of the photograph, or if you're outside, you look and you just copy what you see. Like the handlebars and what's happening here and what's happening here. Is there lines going through it? The bricks on the ground here. But to be honest with the granulating stuff, it's really cool. I must say, this is, to me, is like a pretty neat thing that I can't wait to teach you guys. And again on Thursday, because, and also my classes, I want you to be able to make sure that it looks like that, where it's granulating. And to do that, you have to do wet into wet. All right. So everybody have a great rest of the Sunday, and I will see you on Thursday. And we are painting flowers this week, I think. We're doing some buds, and it's springtime. It's time to get some flowers, some flower scenes in here. And not a motorcycle or a moped. So we'll see you on Thursday, all right? See you later, guys.